Hello everybody, Keith here again. I'm going to do a slightly different session this time. I want to do the ongoing what's in flower at the end of the month video and excuse me, and also do a little bit of a review of some of the plants that I've repotted and what have you in the last couple of months, just to see whether they've taken all right and what might have happened. We've lost a few plants this time. The Alisara Marfix Renaissance Coral has finished, but others are coming on to replace that. Unfortunately, my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types, they've done very badly in the end. They were all spiking. The Thailand Black that I repotted did actually open a flower, which I then cut off using Roger's advice to try and get it to go into vegetative growth straight away. But all the rest got so far. In fact, one of them got very close to opening a bud, and then they all blasted, and I don't know why. I have absolutely no idea why. But some of the others are doing very well, so we'll have a look and we'll see where we end up with this. So let's make a start. We've got this one, which is of course Dendrobium oligophilum. It seems to have been in bloom now for months, and yet it's still doing well. There are still flowers coming out. How many more we've got to come is anybody's guess, but it's really done exceptionally well for me this year, which is the second year I've had it. One of Burnham's hasn't been repotted yet. I'm told by the East Midlands Orchid Society's Dendrobium guru Mel Stephen that these are an absolute pain to repot because the roots are extremely fine, which I can see on this one. So I'll probably wait until it starts to put some new growths up and then give it a whirl, because it's been in this little pot for at least 18 months and probably longer than that. It's got a moss plug underneath it, and a lot of the roots go into that, so it's going to be almost kill or cure, I think. So I'll have to see how that one goes. Spring Dream still putting flowers out on different canes. We've got all the flowers have dropped off some of the others, but we have got odd unused nodes are flowering, so there's a few to come yet, and you can see they're just popping up all over everywhere. Doing very well for, you know, a bog basic Dendrobium nobile. I've got several Berryoda plants now that are coming into flower, just beginning to open. The first one's opened there on this one. I've got a keiki that's flowering very nicely, but it's done a lot better this year in bark than it was doing before. This was repotted in July this year. We've got a lot of roots now coming down into the pot, as well as one or two that are heading off in the opposite direction. So this is a plant that's hopefully back on track. Not in flower as such, but this is Dendrobium tetragonal gigantium, or Tetrabaculum capistis York, which is its alternative nomenclature. This has flowered a lot this year. Got this in March 2019 at the Bournemouth show, and it's flowered a couple of times for me before. This year it didn't put out a new growth, but it has flowered on old canes, and it's flowered several times. And I think you can see in there we've got new buds coming, and there we've got buds that are very close to coming out. So a plant that I'm going to have to keep my eye on, because as I say, it didn't produce a new growth this year, but it's flowering, so we can only keep our fingers crossed. Another dendrobium, my negro hirsutum, the black hair type. This is Frosty Dawn. Still got one flower left. I don't think there's any more to come at the moment, as I can see, but these have been very pleasing because the flowers last a long time. You're talking about 8 to 10 weeks for these flowers. So although I've only got an odd one at a time, one or two at a time, it's been quite a long flowering season for it. There are two plants in this pot. The weaker bit has got new growths on. I think it might need fetching out of here and putting into its own pot. It's not looking great. The root, it's trying to lift out, I think. This one's done very well. That cane, it grew last year. So one that I'm really quite happy with. Miltoniopsis barkley schwartz highland, still going, still fragrant, although the fragrance is fading now. It's not as strong as it was, but it's been open a while, and I think it will be, I don't think we'll see it again. Possibly you might see the very end of it next month, but I think it might well start to drop before very much longer. But that's been a real success story this time, with a spike off 2 different pseudobulbs. So I'm just hoping that we're going to see more growths and more flowerings next year. That one only seems to flower once a year. Another dendrobium that's nearly in flower, only got one bud on it so far. This is one of my 2 lady coleman dendrobiums. It's the one which has flowered most, but it drains a lot of energy, as I'm beginning to realise when they flower. So the cane on this one is not as strong as the cane on the other one, which flowered later than this one did. Although they're both divisions, or cake is probably off the same mother plant, but it's doing alright. This is quite a pretty, fairly standard plant, but it's growing quite well, and I'll take that quite happily. Now, finally, in this group, I want to look at this. This is my Masdevallia, Patricia Hill. This was repotted quite recently. It's my first and only Mazzy. I've not done it before. You'll have seen on the video that how I made up a mix of bark, moss and perlite. Quite a lot of perlite, as you can see in there. But it seems very, very happy. It had been dumping leaves. It's dumped one since, but we have got several young growths on it now. Whether they were growing before, I don't know. But the nice thing is that the visible roots from the younger growths now look quite a lot like little green hose pipes. They're absolutely chock bank full of moisture, and looking well. The flower spikes perked up, and okay, they're starting to go over. We've got two that are, these two have probably got a little while to go, the other four are on their way down. But it was in flower when I got it, so I don't know how long Masdevallias stay in flower at a time. But having said all that, this, you know, the fact I've got, it seems to be more settled since I repotted it, even though it was a bit drastic. Mick of Mixed Masdevallias was complimentary about what I'd done, and his faith does thankfully appear to be borne out by the results so far. So that's the first group of plants. I'll sort out getting some more, and then we'll go into the second group. And here we are again with the second group, and we'll start off with this. This one is the Cattleyas Pacific sunspots. It's been in flower for about 6 or 7 weeks now, and the first few flowers on it are beginning to fade. But it's quite striking. I mean, the flowers themselves perhaps aren't the greatest thing ever, but it certainly makes up with that, with a big spike with a lot of flowers on it. So it's certainly a very striking plant that I'm more than happy to have in my collection. Put this back where it lives. This NoID supermarket mini foul, it's been suggested that it might be a hybrid called Beatrice, but I'm not sure. The Beatrice photos I found online were slightly different, but you get little variations. I mean, this again has been in flower for ages now. It needs repotting. The roots are all over the shop and cramming into the pot. I don't want to do anything. I know fowls will take it, but I don't really want to start disturbing it while it's in flower and while it's doing this. And you can see quite clearly here there's quite a few more buds to come on this spike. I think that's going to be the end of it, but that's been a lovely display. And I think, you know, for all the fact that it's a NoID foul, and we all know that people look down the noses at them as being, you know, cheap and nasty and easy to care for. So what? It looks good, and it reflowers, and I'm always pleased to see it. Same with this one. When you think that I bought this for the jar it was in, it came from Marks and Spencer's in Salisbury in March 2019, because I wanted a jar to stand a Vanda in, and this happened to be the foul that I thought was the most different from anything else I'd got. And I do like this plant. It's really taken off since I got it. The leaves have got bigger and bigger. It flowered for me, I think earlier this year, I think. It's put this out. Muggins actually knocked the end of the spike off, but it flowered on what amounts to a branch. The flowers start with a distinct greenish tinge, and then it fades back to something that's much more yellow. And I thought, well, fair enough, you know, this will soon be over. But it's now put up another spike with some more buds on. How many buds, I don't know. But we've got 2 spikes, which I've not had before. But again, the NoID foul, I don't care. Another quick review. This is Psychopsis mariposa. Another one that I repotted relatively recently. I found last time I repotted it that it stalled because it wasn't drying out fast enough. Yes, these are a moisture loving orchid. They don't like to be soaking wet. There's a difference, it's becoming ever clearer, between liking moisture and liking to be wet. Some do like to be wet, these are not those. It likes to have what I'm coming to call a wet damp cycle rather than a wet dry cycle. They don't like being thoroughly dried out either. So this went into, as you'll see from the video I did, into a mix of moss and bark, mark and boss. I haven't had a drink yet. It went back into this pot which I put full of holes, slightly less moss than I used before, and it's drying out quite nicely. It's moved out of the conservatory where it was last year, and it's now living on a windowsill with a central heating radiator underneath it, and I thought, well, you know, we'll see how it goes. But the new growth on the back is extending, not very fast, but it's doing something. But the thing that is extending is the bud on the flower spike. So we've got something is happening. It's still going to flower for me this year. So again, that's another one that I've seemed to have got away with. Okay, probably the smallest orchid I've ever seen, never mind in my collection. This is a tolumnia oxiana, and I was sent this by Zanarapa, and I initially tried mounting it in fresh air, and somebody said, oh no, it needs to go onto something, and I tried with a piece of branch off one of our trees in the garden, and it was never that happy on there. I wish I'd done this early, but I found this piece of cork bark in a local pet shop for about £3, snapped it up, and the nice thing is this little groove in here, when I spray it, 'cause I spray this once a day at the moment, that forms almost like a little reservoir down in the bottom, so it's going to get some moisture coming through. It's doing better than it's ever done before. Now again, this is on a living room windowsill to try and give it as much light as I can, to try and keep it as warm as I can. I don't know whether it's going to do any good, it's down to this, but I've got to say that the roots do seem to be extending, which they really didn't do before. So I'm keeping my fingers firmly crossed with this one that we might get away with it, because it's not got this, you know, we haven't really seen that before, and I'm hoping that once the roots start to find the surface of this bark, they'll start to grip. Now then, last of all in this group, these are my estrapia. Nothing's really changed in the way I'm keeping this now. There's 3 of them that are in this old fish tank which you've seen before, and they're all in flower, which is obviously something to be very pleased with. You'll have seen this if you follow me on Facebook, or you're in the Rogers Orchids Facebook group, because I've posted pictures of them. This is sanguinea. This is the first flower on this one. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. This deep blood red, unsurprisingly. Sanguinea means of the blood. Beautiful little flower. Ever so pleased with that, and you know, now it's flowered, I'm sure things will start to move with that. This one is the copper estrapia, Cuprea. And it's flowered 4 or 5 times now. So I'm really pleased that this one's doing so well. Again, a beautiful little flower, not quite the same as sanguinea. Never mind the coloration, the way the flower displays is not quite the same, but it's quite quite attractive. Those spots down these, well, it's not really a lip, is it? It's the two of the sepals that grow together. But that's doing all right. I bought 3 plants from Burnham's. They had an offer of 3 small plants for £30. You know, I think there were £12 plants, and you got three for £30 if you bought all 3 together. And I bought them out of flower because I liked these particular flowers. This one, again, slightly different to the others. The antennae aren't as long. In fact, I think the flower itself is slightly smaller. But this is brachypus. And to me, this is very, very pretty. I love that yellow area here with the red lines on it. I was extremely worried by this plant. It's tried to flower probably about 4 times now, and the blooms were getting slightly further forward each time, but it would get so far and then just blast, and I was getting quite worried. Had I got a duff plant? Did it need slightly different care from the others? And then it managed to put these out, so I ended up with all 3 of these in flower on Christmas Day. So that was a lovely Christmas present to me. It actually has grown quite well. We've got this keiki which hasn't put any roots down yet, but it's doing all right. I'm reasonably happy with the way this is growing. I'm just waiting for the flowers. And it's interesting, if it's like the others, it will actually flower more than once from the same leaf joint, because it comes in here from underneath the leaf. So that's the second group, and I'll go and get some more to look at, put these away. And now we'll come to the last group. This is 2 flowering plants and some progress. I've got to say that although it'll be a bit of a fiddle to try and pull them out, I am quite pleased that I've actually got nubbins showing on species dendrobiums, which are the first time that I've really tried to keep them properly over the winter. Seems to have worked. It's not as cold in here as people think they need. It's got central heating radiators in this conservatory. It was down to -1 outside last night, and the temperature in here dropped to about 16.5, 15.5, something in that region. So towards the bottom end of what a lot of orchids will tolerate for any length of time, but it's only coming up to, what now, 19.5. So the range is not great, but they are over towards the window. They're getting the maximum amount of light, but just to try and keep the heat in, because when I tried not to, it got bitter cold in here. I have got all the blinds down, so we're not getting the levels of daylight they could do, but it's obviously enough to trigger. So I've got some hybrids, and I've got some species showing nubs. I'm just keeping my fingers very firmly crossed that they're not going to turn into keikis, because one of those was a keiki machine. Okay, still in flower with 2 spikes. This is Phalaenopsis minimark, one of the smaller fowls, one that I do find very, very attractive. The little orange freckles and that orange lip. It's really, really pretty. The second little spike down there. It's a branch. Has got a couple open. Not going to have a huge number of buds, I don't think. Looking at that, looks like 5 possibly. But this is obviously a plant that's reasonably happy. It's not doing as well as I would like. These leaves are not as big as they could be. Now it's been in this pot for a bit. It's in a deep pot because when I unpotted it last time, the roots were very long, and I don't like cropping roots. I would probably have been better sticking it into a smaller pot, but I will be, as soon as this thing finally stops flowering, this will be out of the pot and being turned over. And now we have the gift that just keeps on giving. Phalaenopsis pink twilight. You can probably see that the flowers have dropped off most of the spike. We've still got a nice little cluster at the end with some more buds yet to come. Not too many more, and I'm pretty sure that's the end of that spike. But then it might branch, you never know. This just the thing just will not stop blooming. I do think it's nice. It wasn't quite so blessed big, but nevertheless, this is one that I think anybody could be proud of, because it's such an absolute monster and very, very eye-catching, of course. Couple of reviews just to round off with. This is the Miltoniopsis that I bought from Burnham's. It's identified as one of the breathless hybrids. There are a number of those that look very similar, but undoubtedly it's certainly one of that group. I have never kept them before. I shied very wary of them because I'd had a Nelly Isla, which has got a lot of Miltoniopsis in it. Did okay with it initially, and then just did something that it objected violently to, and it went downhill like it had sort of jumped off the north face of the Eiger. And you know, I've never seen an orchid go backwards so fast. This one I've repotted. It's got 3 really good new growths. They're all forming their new pseudobulbs, but they're not really showing too much of that yet. But it's not drying out perhaps quite as fast as I might like. I might need to put some holes in the pot and give it a bit more ventilation. But overall, this has been moved onto a bedroom windowsill. I mean, the temperature says 15, so it could possibly come in here. It says 15 to 25 on the temperature guide, so it could possibly come back in here, but at the moment I've not got an awful lot of room for it, and it's quite a big plant, so it's sitting on a bedroom windowsill. Temperature is going to be around about 20, so it should be right in the middle of its range, and it doesn't seem to be doing too badly. The other group, which we need to perhaps have a look at now, are these seedling Cattleyas that I got from Ridlington School in a flask in March 2019. They were deflasked in June 2020, and the stronger plants were put into Burnham's seedling mix, which is very fine bark and perlite and a little tiny bit of moss, I think. The weaker plants I put into moss because I thought that might give them a little bit more moisture and humidity. Unsurprisingly, the stronger plants are doing the best. These, particularly these three, are looking good. These are looking quite good. Those tolerably welcome, nice, good roots there. These, any losses have really been in this lot. Well, they were the weaker seedlings anyway, so it's difficult to sort of say. So, you know, again, we've got some good roots starting to show, and I think we're going to be all right with at least some of these. But I've got quite a lot of seedlings that if all of these get going, I shan't know what to do with them. But they are progressing, and most of them are progressing positively. So I think that pretty much sums up where we are at the end of 2020, probably one of the worst years any of us have experienced, and I'm 68. I can't think of a worse one in my lifetime. We've had a lot to put up with, and we've got through it, thank goodness. And with a bit of luck, it's got some light showing at the end of the tunnel. Just hope it's not another oncoming train. So I will wish you the happiest of New Years. I hope your orchids grow well for you, and I will see you in the new year. Bye.